because of the work that we do in the Hill District, I wanted to give voice to these questions. So Congresswoman, they came in later than a lot of others. So I'm not asking you to answer it, but I do want to give it voice. And whoever asked these questions, I ask for you to, expect follow-up from the office. This question is specifically, and comment is specifically about seniors. How can your team help all seniors to live in renter housing, get their rent rebate refund, and stop being rejected because they are not living in a home, a house, but still paying to make their rent? So that's something that I'm going to actually get back to because we have another cluster.
Well, I can actually answer that very quickly. Your state rep are the people who do that. That's the answer. It's just go to your state reps.
So state reps,
they run the rent rebate program. They do a lot of work on it, and they're very good at it.
Okay. This one is more about the area median income, which is designated by the area in which you live and how the rents are determined. When will the area median income be changed to ethically and honestly be affordable housing? So that's an important question that I'm going to ask. Your office is going to get all of these questions. Everyone who is not able to get answered tonight. That's probably a federal question and a county question, an important question nonetheless. It is a very important question. Okay, so I'm going to do this last clustering, and I think that's going to be, and then we'll close after that. So please stay after the Congresswoman answers this final clustering. This last clustering of questions is geared towards federal agencies and or services. Okay, so this is Val Weller. I have to give a shout out to Aiden Drucker because he's a high school sophomore and he wants to know how young people get involved. Okay. So that's just me. Mark Mancini, Nicole Patterson, Serenity Klemp, Annie Rainey, and Manique Brazil, and Leanne Doncher. These people have specific questions about public education, busing, and protecting public schools. Yep. Or they want to know if they can fly.
No.
Federal Aviation Administration. Or they want to know if you are supportive of House Resolution 70 regarding the privatization of the post office, and if you are not yet knowledgeable about all of the details of that,
I got it.
The bottom line is they don't want to.
Yeah, I got it.
And if that's going to be protected. And then there is a federal employee here who wants to know what they can do to protect their job and their interests. So again, this is that the status of those federal agencies. Thank you.
Okay. This is a really unfortunate time to have to fly twice a week. God, I'm horrified. I'm just not even gonna lie. I am horrified. Because there are cuts to the FAA. There are cuts to folks who are working in the towers. And I'm not a conspiracy theory. I do not have the answer for why these planes are falling out of the air. I do not know. But I do know that in times like this, we are supposed to have confidence in our government, not fear that they're going to make it worse. And I know too many people who fear that it's going to be worse. If this had happened at any other time in history, the reaction immediately wouldn't have been, is there a DEI in the cockpit? It would have been, we are going to take every measure to make sure that the skies are as safe as we know them to be, and to keep them safe and to make them safer. That's the type of leadership that a president is supposed to offer. When we have insecurities or when we're scared, he's supposed to come in as a sound voice and say that we're not going to fire more people. We're going to hire the best, and they know what they're doing, and that we are going to be on the front lines of securing whatever it is that we're doing. And we are, unfortunately, in a time in our country's history where we can't say that we feel that security. Department of Education, public schools. That was a question, right?
Public schools and busing.
Busing. Okay. I haven't heard a busing question in like a few decades. But Public education is really important to me. I went to a public school. I went to public school from K to 12 and through freshman to senior year. I went to Woodland Hills. I went to a public school that is underfunded. And in that public school, I found sports and music. I got to learn how to play the clarinet, the bass clarinet, and the tenor saxophone, and then learn how to direct the band. I learned how to play basketball and run and use the blocks and track. I learned how to read and to write. I learned how to be a congressperson. It prepared me to go to law school and be successful there. But not just me. Public schools serve all students. And it doesn't, yeah, that's worth clapping for, because public schools serve all students. Public schools serve students who are transient or unhoused, that student who is in foster care and maybe doesn't, have two parents to advocate for them. It serves the kids with disabilities, no matter what that disability is. The IDEA, I know that the wrestling lady doesn't know what the IDEA is. But it is an important piece of federal legislation that ensures that every single child has access to a free and appropriate education. Because the reality is that some schools do not take kids with disabilities. They will not educate them. They cannot educate them. When we privatize and we use vouchers, we're using public dollars to discriminate against other people. And that does not mean that public schools are perfect. It means that we have work to do. It means that at every level of government, we need to be making sure that dollars are being used appropriately. We need to make sure that we're cutting through bureaucracy that doesn't work. That if testing doesn't work for students, then we shouldn't continue to invest in it. We can make changes to public education that serves all children. But if we cut and we gut public education, then that means that any child can be left behind. Every child can be left behind. And I know that you think it isn't going to be yours. But if your child makes it and your neighbor's child doesn't, what does that mean for the future of America? What is a country that doesn't invest in education, or a country that doesn't invest in healthcare? I said that that's not a country that's investing in its future. So when we talk about busing, I go back to my school. My school is a desegregation case. My school was a desegregation case in the 80s. You remember the Titans? We're that. Decades later, because sometimes the government is the only mechanism that we have to ensure that we don't have discrimination. So it is important that students go to schools that are equitable, they go to schools that are diverse. Every child benefits from a diverse education, from diverse teachers, from diverse curricula, from diverse worldviews. We all benefit from that. It makes our country safer, it makes our country stronger, and it makes our country more competitive. And if our administration believes in national competitiveness, they talk about China a lot. Well, how are we going to be globally competitive if we're not investing in STEM education? How are we going to be globally competitive if we're saying that we want those kids to have it, but not those kids? You don't see other countries doing that. They invest in all kids because a high tide lifts all ships. That's what public education is. What was the other question? I don't understand the busing question. I got bussed. I don't know.
Let me clarify the question about busing.
Okay.
The question is, how can we prevent more closures of schools?
Oh, okay. Oh my God. I was like, I don't understand the busing question. Yeah, I don't actually. So the Pittsburgh public schools. Yeah, because Pittsburgh public schools and the proposal to close a lot of schools, and sometimes when we see those. And public transportation. Okay, yeah, a lot of schools. So this is actually going to be a very difficult question, because one of the problems that school districts have with public transportation is actually charter schools. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. It actually costs, anytime a child goes from a public school to a charter school, the money follows. But they also, if that public school is a school that buses, that means they have to pay extra to bus a kid that doesn't go to their school anymore. So the buses actually cost a lot of money, and that's why we see a lot of districts that actually just don't have buses, because they can't afford to pay for both their kids to be bused and other kids to be bused. So that is a really intricate thing. This is a state level policy, state dollars, and how we spend it. Our courts, our Commonwealth courts in Pennsylvania deemed our funding scheme to be unconstitutional. And at the state level, they have to go back to the drawing board to figure out what is a more equitable way to fund public education that is not actually overburdening in property tax, so homeowners and renters, but is instead getting out more equitably, because we have school districts that have vastly more by your zip code than others. So we have school districts that actually don't bus, not because they don't want to, because it's expensive. The cuts. I am actually concerned about cuts, right? We know that people want schools in their neighborhoods. Black kids deserve to go to schools that are also in their neighborhoods. Black kids, brown kids, poor kids should not always be sent to other schools. And too often when we do cuts, we are usually cutting. Those are the first ones that are on the chopping block. Too often when we see schools that are in disrepair, my Republican colleagues on the Ed and Labor Committee talk a lot about COVID and those COVID era when, well, these schools didn't open up fast. These schools open up much faster than these schools. This public school gets this much money, but they didn't open. Yeah, because it actually costs more to educate kids in poverty. Because the schools in Pennsylvania have asbestos and lead and heating and cooling issues. It's actually very hard to educate somebody in a pandemic if you can't ventilate the rooms. So the investments that we need to make in the infrastructure of our schools, we have schools that kids go to that if it was a government building, we would not work in it. You would not work in it. They would be called uninhabitable if there were anybody else going but kids and teachers and staff. And as a state and as a federal government, we should be ashamed. We should not have schools like that. So even as we're talking about closing schools, we got to also talk about fixing schools. We got to talk about replacing them, right? If they are in disrepair, then that doesn't mean that they just go and this neighborhood is now out of luck. I think that is a really important question. I think we're going to hear that debate a lot because the parents in Pittsburgh, and not just Pittsburgh Public, but parents across the Commonwealth have been really, really engaged in that. And that is the answer right now, is that engagement is most critical right now. So I know that you all, everybody can't go to school board meetings every time. You work, you have other obligations, and it's unreasonable to expect you all to always be able to go to town halls or school board meetings. But we do have to find ways of registering our concern. We have to find ways of, bringing ideas to the forefront or saying, hey, I need to understand that idea a little bit better, especially as we see other people using school boards to do other things. So those go hand in hand, that sort of engagement. I'd like to think that the people, the school board members that we have sent on our behalf to care for our students will listen to the concerns that we have and will explain out the parameters that they have. But we have that right to be able to get that information. We have the right to be in that conversation about which schools are open, which schools are closed, about how we can collectively save some of these schools. But a lot of this comes down to funding. And as we talk about the Department of Education being eliminated, we are talking about the federal government possibly not being that support structure that we need now more than ever. The states have dismantled public education funding in Pennsylvania and have been doing it for decades. And we've never replaced the level of funding that we had pre-Tom Corbett, if you remember that guy, pre-him. We've not replaced that level of funding, which means that school districts around in the poorest areas are still not getting the dollars that they need to be able to do everything that they can. And they're making dollars stretch, and they're doing the Lord's work with them kids. But the state isn't doing its part to fund public education. And when we got a rainy day fund and we're not using that rainy day and it is pouring down raining and we got tarps over top of us, that's what that is for. So we need to see state engagement right now. So that's where you go to the state, because that's where they dictate in the budget where dollars come, whether those dollars come to this school or that school, how we do funding schemes. And that's going to be a really important conversation happening there. Okay. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry. I was going to say, I'm so sorry for any questions that I didn't get to. Wait a second. I'm so sorry for any questions that I didn't get to. Again, if you have those pressing questions, this is not the last time and the last opportunity that you have to ask them. We want to answer them. We want to get them back out to you. We want to continue to engage. So this won't be the last time we do this. Please come out, send somebody else the next time. Continue to engage us on all of our social media platforms. I'm Rep. Summerlee and I'm Summer for PA on other things. We have about 5 offices. So our brick and mortar is in East Liberty at 211 North Whitfield, I think. We have other ones. We just opened up a satellite office in Monroeville. We have one in Beachview. We have one in Jeanette. We have one in Bethel Park. So those are offices that we have opened up to make sure that it's easier for you to access us, but we will go to you where we can. So you can reach us at those places. My staff is, of course, here. Our phone numbers exist. We have little handouts that tell you what services we do that we can help you with. Please share that information out with other people and continue to stay tuned in. But before we get here, I hope that you don't leave discouraged. I hope that you leave recognizing that this game is not over. and that our democracy is worth fighting for, and that we have power in our communities to stand back up, that we will not be backing down from Donald Trump or anybody else who stands in our way. And I feel encouraged because I know that this community backs what we are doing. So PA 12 will be heard in Washington, D.C. PA 12 will be heard in the Democratic caucus, it'll be heard on the floor, and it'll be heard in everything that we do. So thank you for taking the time to share with us.